All right, welcome back. Sorry about early audio issues there. Taking a look at the Monaco GP course profile here, you can see the climbing on the back side of the course here after they move away from the virtual C, we'll call it. Not a huge bit of climbing today. It's really more like a criterion circuit. It's about laps. It's about circuits along the way. And it's really going to be about accelerations. We'll talk about the difference in RGT racing and the very specific nuances needed to do well in esports racing. My name is Brad Stoner. I'll be your host today as we get ready for our first races of the day. We've got Pro Men coming up at a 10 o'clock Eastern time start, and then Pro Women start at 11 o'clock Eastern time just after that. So riders on the Monaco course going to be doing laps again around the circuit as we get ready for the Echelon Racing League this year. An interesting take on e-racing, as these courses will mimic real-life courses in American bike racing. We'll go to various races around the country where they will actually be able to load in their courses. And those are the course profiles that the riders will race on throughout the season. So today we're racing on a Monaco course, but later on in the season, we will be moving to courses that will mimic real life courses. We do have the Project Echelon founder, CEO, director, and director of Echelon, Eric Hill, on the line with us here today as Eric gets ready not only to race out there today, but will also be participating in the competition. So, Eric, I see you set up in your pain cave there, ready to go. This must be a special moment for you, just a few minutes away from the first preseason event of the Echelon Racing League.
Absolutely. This marks the start of a lot of work coming together, in a major effort to bring all the stakeholders of cycling together and use esports as a means to grow our sport.
So, Eric, very quickly, just give us a quick rundown of the race today. Any final words for riders, fans, participants?
Yeah, I mean, we're a couple weeks out from the official start of the season, and so I think we're going to see some people that are really familiar with the platform, and they're going to come out ahead, and they're going to be looking strong. And there's going to be people that are still learning and trying to understand this new venue of esports. But it's going to be a wonderful opportunity to highlight what we're going to offer this year and what these athletes are capable of. We're really excited to highlight these teams, these races throughout the off season, and really to promote in real life racing throughout the regular season.
Now, Eric, with in real life racing, obviously we get to see the beautiful scenery of the locales where we get a race. But one fun thing about e-racing, we get to see inside the homes of our favorite riders. Can you give me a quick tour of your pain cave? I see the numbers behind from some of your in real life races. What's your setup look like?
These are all my in real life races. I got my sheet hung up so you don't have to look at the rest of my basement. I'm on my SARS H3 hammer. And then back here I got my TV, my computer hooked up to it, and then up here I got a camera that's shooting me for a Zoom call that you're going to be using to pull live feeds of riders in. So hopefully we create some dynamic footage and give people a real inside look of what e-racing looks like.
All right, well, it is just about time to race, so I will let you go, get those hands on the bars, and let's get ready to race with the first preseason event of the Echelon Racing League. All right, so you see the riders lined up on the line here. Good lineup of teams. Now, teams were allowed to field a larger group of riders for the competition today. Normally, teams will be limited to 6 riders, but for the race today, the organizers allowing up to 12 riders so that more riders can get experience on the RGT platform. More riders can get a feel for what these Echelon Race League events will be like. So you'll see some teams fielding larger teams than others. Obviously, not all the teams able to field their full roster of 12, but you will see some teams with up to 8 or 9 riders in the roster today. All right, underway and racing as we take off on the Monaco GP course. Now, again, not a ton of climbing, but this is where you're really going to have to understand the dynamics of RGT racing and how it differs from the other platforms. The normal blob racing, not quite the same physics here. We'll talk about it as it develops because we will see some interesting drafting dynamics going on here. But bottom line, it's much more realistic. Think about it more like a real life dynamics where the different parts of the peloton matter where you are. So. So we've got a few gameplay cameras up today. We'll see riders from various views. And just like racing, there's going to be group separations. Now, if you're not familiar with e-racing, if you haven't watched a lot of the early racing that happens, racing certainly develops different than real life racing. There's no question about that. None of these races will be just like a real life race, maybe a lead group and then some chasers and then a peloton. You do see groups form on the road, but we tend to see a lot more separation. It tends to string out, spread out a lot more in these e-races. So we'll see some separation, I think, by the end of this one. All right, good to see James Vickers up here at the front. RGT zone. As these guys take a look up on the front. Mark, you can hit. Sorry, that's my bad. You can hit play on the music and then bring that in if you want. There's music in all. All right, so already seeing the separation here as you see, we'll call this 20 guys up front. And here's a good look at our various views out there today. Now, as we get separation and get different groups, obviously we'll follow those different groups around. And it looks like that's already happening. I think I see some maybe Canyon Esports jerseys up here at the front. Another cool part about RGT and the Echelon Racing League, the teams will have their team jerseys in the RGT racing platform as they move into the full races of the season. Vickers doing a nice job setting tempo up on the front. You see Ray there as well from C-Sport Gutenplan Coaching in the neon kit. They got theirs loaded in and ready to go. There's Project Echelon jersey flying by up the front. You're going to see a lot of those today. Project Echelon fielding a decent-sized team today. Ravel taking a look off the front here. So you see Ravel has really kicked things off here. Got a little bit of space off the front, and that's going to cause a few more riders, well, more than a few more riders to come up and join here. So this is what this e-racing is like. It's very call and answer. It's very tactical, and it's very aggressive. So a lot of times it's tough to get away. You see a lot of sort of over-response, over-correcting when riders go off the front, like this attack from James Vickers. You'll see a bigger counterattack going over the front like this from Echelon Racing League. From Project Echelon, sorry, I should say. So Eric Hill, who we talked to at the top of the show, is founder of Project Echelon, which is a race team that it's actually a foundation, but they run various multi-sport teams and bicycle racing teams. And then out of Project Echelon, he founded the Echelon Racing League this year with his teammate Frank Conduit, who is also racing in today's race and co-founder of the Echelon Racing League. So that's how they got started. A league started by a couple of bike racers, and they just missed bike racing in this bizarre time that is 2020. Jaden Yeager moving up to the front. Yeager has been a strong esports competitor in the move to virtual racing here in 2020. Obviously, an exceptional rider on the road. We know him as a multi-time national champion. He was a Masters, I think, 35 to 39 age category time trial national champion in the United States. And he has really been able to adapt that well to e-racing. this looks like Ostenfeld taking a look off the front. And there is a live look at Neil Ostenfeld putting in the effort to stay up at the front of the group here from the Evoc bike team. And you can see Ostenfeld caused a little resurgence in the power here. There's Marko Pavlik up to the front, spending a little time in the virtual wind. And so this is on the sort of climbing section of the course. Couple spectators out on the course there. Luckily, our GT knows how to handle those. So this is kind of the backside climb of the course here. CC Pantel. Ooh, going deep here. Now, another part of RGT you can see on the left-hand side of the screen as we saw the leaderboard. When the numbers go red to the right of their name, that says that they are into the red zone of the threshold. Mark, give me that overlay graphic of the power zones. You can also see the small color bars to the left-hand side of the leaderboard, all the way on the far left side of the screen. That shows the various zones that the riders are in based on the FTP. And there's a look at sort of the range of FTP levels. So those colors will correspond with the zone that they're in, going from blue to red. Onto the descent here. So streaming live on various channels today. We're on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, pretty much everything. I've got all that on my screen. If you are in the chat, let us know where you're watching from. Let us know who you're cheering for, and let us know who you're watching for out there today. We'll try and get some shout outs from the riders. Yeah, this is already a decent selection being made here, down to what is maybe 20 riders up at the front. And you can see these guys averaging right around 3.6, 3.7 for the heavier guys. Yeah, and this is going to be one of the crucial early selections. You can see the colors changing the guys up at the front as the lead riders get into the wind physics of being on the front. And so they have to deal, or you'll see the power zone change a lot of times as rider moves to the front. Can you figure out who Ostenfeld rides for? Yeah, do Neil's team, do Evoc bike, and then show Neil. You know what I'm saying? Like go full screen, or I'll start talking about the team and then go back to gameplay and put that up. Blackburn making an appearance on the front. And there you go. You can see the look behind these guys. Not much after that rear group ends. All right, so that's it. That is your selection right there. If you're not in this group, you're not winning today. Pavlik setting tempo again. Pavlik and Vickers have both been, but you see, as soon as Vickers got to the front there, he let off a little bit, let off the gas just a little bit. So he didn't have to do too much work. You don't want to burn yourself out as you get to the front. Here's a look at Jaden Yeager. Now, Pavlik racing with the Evoc bike team. That is the team of Neil Ostenfeld, who we also saw earlier. It's like Rapid or something. Rapid Racing or something. Yeager putting in a big effort off the front here. Now, it'll be interesting to see if anyone goes with Pavlik to try to bring him in. He's coming up on 15 miles. Yeah, and here you go. Just a couple riders trying to come up on him. I think Pavlik has just one with him. And that might actually be a ghost rider coming up with Pavlik. This might be Pavlik alone. Yeah, Pavlik going to be solo trying to go across. So this is going to be Yeager and Pavlik today. 15 miles to go. Yeager goes away solo. Pavlik, the only one to leave the group to bridge. And now these guys trying to figure out what to do. Vickers back to the front of the group, but he's going to need some help. Pavlik got him in sight, but this is tough. Man, when you can see him up the road, just like in real life, once you can see that rabbit up the road mentally, it becomes, one, a lot easier to put the effort in. But, man, when you're thinking about that gap constantly, seeing it ahead of you and not able to make any progress, that becomes demoralizing pretty quickly. So Pavlik going to need to make up some time here pretty quick. And he's not able to go across solo here. He's getting swallowed up by the group. These guys have to work together to chase Jaden Yeager. This is Yeager versus the world. Swart going to go to the front, do a little bit of work. Yeager coasting on the descent. And here we go. Now these guys back in the chase group starting to get serious. Now, 14 miles, long way to go for Jaden Yeager, especially solo. The physics of this game will catch up to Jaden Yeager, but he's a time trial specialist. So if anyone can do it, Jaden Yeager's the guy that would be able to go from 14 miles out in an e-race. This goes back to what we were talking about earlier with the different strengths of riders. Sometimes your skill in real life or power on the road just doesn't translate to e-racing. It's not the same value in e-racing or virtual racing on the bike. But someone like a time trial specialist that can do those long, sustained efforts, someone that does well on an FTP test, that it's not so much about tactics or about snap or anything like that. A lot of times you'll see riders with the long, sustained power ability have an advantage in virtual racing. Here goes Pavlik again, but he gets up to the front. He's like, guys, I can't keep doing this. They're holding Jaeger right around, you see on the left-hand side, 170 yards to the right of Jaeger's name. But look at the zone that Jaden Jaeger is in. See how he's in the orange zone to the left of his name? Everybody else sitting in the blue zone. Yeah, so here we go. Now there's a little effort up the left side of the group. And it looks like this might have allowed a few more riders to catch on as well from the back. These guys are really sitting on in the main group, not wanting to chase Jaeger, not wanting to take charge there. Yeah, look how this is stringing out. Now, again, this is partially because they're on the climb, again, on the back side of the course here. Mark, can I get the map in the top left box of this? Could you just change it on multi-view right now while it's on program? And you see the little hairpin that this field is that the field is on right now on the right hand side. That'll take them back down to the bottom of it. I just meant replace the source, whatever you have in the top left. Just replace it on the drop down. It doesn't crop it automatically? See Jaeger's still on the way down. Keeping his effort in orange, that means he's keeping the effort up. You see he's working his way down sort of the top of the graphic here on the bottom right of your picture. He's going to work down to the right-hand side of that, and then they go down to the very lowest part of the course at the bottom of the graphic. So a lot of this course is also about being able to use the descent to your advantage, I think. Jaeger has kept on the gas there where a lot of riders have been letting off. They've been staying in the blue or green zones, the lower zones of their efforts, of their thresholds, whereas Jaeger, like on the bottom of this profile in the green section there, has been keeping his effort strong, even on the sharp downhill sections, still putting watts on. Nice job. And now can you go back to gameplay? We'll call this 10. Trying to chase. Jaeger still maintaining the gap, going just under 12 miles to go now. I'm impressed how well this chase group has stayed together. With the effort by Pavlik early on, the group really didn't separate, didn't blow up. Here goes Pavlik again on the front. Evok definitely has a plan today, and they're in a good situation. Pavlik obviously very strong here. And they got Ostenfeld in that group as well, I think. Should be a pair of Evok riders. Evok Racing with 3 in this one. Patrick Wall, the third one on that squad. 4, sorry, with Pavlik, Ostenfeld, Pantier, and Wall. More separation in the chase group now. We'll call this 6. And they're starting to hunt down Jaeger here. And we're approaching 10 miles to go here. Just under 11 right now as Blackburn moves to the front of that chase group. And now they're going to try to tack on over top one another. Jaeger steady in the orange zone. He's only got to hold it for another 10 miles. And he's got to be going deep right now. IRL speeds of this group be right around 23 miles an hour right now. And Jaeger going to be averaging right around 26. These guys working their way down that long descent in the field right now. As RGT has now moved Jaeger off of yards ahead and into miles. So we've thrown away the yardstick, and now we're measuring in miles for Jaeger's gap here. I want to apologize to all of our European viewers for the invention of the imperial measurement system. One day, us Americans will get back on metric. So again, these courses mimicking real roads or real life courses. So the elevation gain is based on this, the Monaco GP course, which takes place obviously on the water in Monaco. So a chance to ride some of the legendary climbs, but with matching power. The resistance on the trainer, the feedback from the game will match the real life elevation of the various courses that these riders are racing. So in the Echelon Racing League later on in the season, when we go to races like Tour of the Gila for their virtual race, riders will be able to climb what's called the Gila Monster. It's the legendary climb of the Tour of the Gila, and riders will be able to race that same elevation profile on the RGT app as we head there later on in the season. So that comes later on in November before we move to a dual weekend of Bucks County Classic and the Armed Forces Cycling Classic. Then it's over to the Gateway Cup, one of the premier races on the U.S. calendar. Then the Redlands Classic, the legendary Redlands Classic. And then it's over to Joe Martin for the Joe Martin Stage Race. And then the Green Mountain Stage Race and the Tour of America's Dairyland will wrap up the season for the Echelon Racing League coming up in March later on this year. Ostenfeld up into second, trying to chase Jaeger down. As they approach 9 miles to go. Now, the separation on the climb here, not as important because they're moving a little slower. You see average speed up there at 17 we'll call it 17 miles an hour for Ostenfeld, trying to go across the gap. Jaeger lapping some riders on the Monaco GP circuit here. And this is very similar to Jaeger racing in criteriums around the United States. He spends a couple weeks every year racing at the Tour of America's Dairyland up in Wisconsin, where he's from, where he lives. And let's just say Jaden Jaeger lapping people in a criterium is not a new occurrence. All right, Jones, Blackburn, Ostenfeld, English, Swart, Dowd, Vogel, and Jones all in this group. Here goes Ostenfeld again, trying to go across this gap and bring Jaeger back. He's got him back into 150 yards. He's going to get a little bit of help here as, again, it's really just about sort of constant effort, staying in that zone and just being able to slowly reel Jaden Jaeger back in. But that is exactly the game that Jaden Jaeger wants to play. So this is a tall order for this group. You can see they're down to 2, 4, 6. We'll call it 8 riders now. Pavlik off the back a little bit. He might be in trouble after those early efforts. Remember, Marco Pavlik doing a lot of work early on. He was the one kind of riding like Ostenfeld is now, trying to spark an aggressive ride, trying to get other riders to come up to help him, but just didn't get that cooperation. Ostenfeld in the red here. This is a big effort. They're going deep on the front right now. Swart is going to go. English is going to go. This is bad news for Jaden Jaeger. I wouldn't be surprised if you start seeing that gap come down soon. Here's Ostenfeld at the top left of your screen. You see the effort that he is putting in. And it's amazing how fatigued these guys will get after just 29 minutes of elapsed racing here already. Ostenfeld looking like he's put in quite the effort today. And I'm going to call this 7 up to Jaeger. Look at the watts per kilo on Jaeger, doing 5 right now as everyone else is hovering around 2 or 3. Ostenfeld now going to go up over 5 as he goes into 6 into the red here. And this is kind of the dangerous part of trying to race against Jaden Jaeger. So 8 miles of racing remaining. It's almost like these guys need to communicate in the chase group. I guess that's one difference of e-racing or virtual racing, is that these riders can have communication with their teams. A lot of them will run separate, like a Discord channel or a Discord chat in order to communicate directly with their teammates. Or a lot of times it's just a FaceTime call or a phone call, something like that, so they can at least have some communication with each other. But the riders in the group can't talk to each other. In real life, obviously, they can cooperate. They can come up with a plan. They can talk about how they're feeling. They can talk about what their roles are with the teams. But in e-racing, the riders from different teams aren't able to communicate with each other. Maybe that'll change in the future. It'd be interesting to see if we could get maybe all the riders on a group chat. Although, if you've ever been on a Zoom call with that many people, that might not go so well. So we'll have to test that out. Some emerging technology, we'll say. Chase group growing a little bit, with Davenport back in 5th, up into 3rd now. And Jaeger's lead starting to shrink a little bit, down right around 120 yards now, the difference. See Jaeger kind of moving to on again, off again power here. He was orange and then blue and then orange and then green. He's just kind of tipping into that orange zone and then backing off. I don't know if he doesn't want to spend a whole bunch of time in there, or if he's just trying to limit the amount of time that he spends in there at one time. A big part of the power zones is that you want to limit the amount of time you spend in the higher zones, because if you redline, if you blow up, well, that's pretty much the end of your race, the end of your effort. So it's very important that these guys keep the engines running just cool enough, not too hot. So we've seen English and Swart up at the front of the chase group a lot today. Some nice team tactics there. Obviously not going to chase down their teammate up here in the solo breakaway. So they are staying in the group sort of as some insurance, but you won't see those names doing a whole lot of leading at the front of this group unless they're trying to slow things down for Jaden Jaeger. I didn't realize how many of those guys in the chase group were Jaeger's teammates. That would explain why it's been so tough for guys like Neil Ostenfeld to try to close down this gap, because there's at least 2 guys in this chase group that have no interest in helping Ostenfeld. And in a group of 9, 2 guys can have a pretty significant impact on this group. Jones and Ostenfeld going to link up here. See the bottom picture here as Ostenfeld puts in a little bit of power. Yeah, I think this is going to be it. These might be the 2 guys that are able to try to go after Jaden Jaeger today, with Ostenfeld and Jones trying to bring back the solo leader here. Yeah, and you can see these guys working well together. Look at the power by Jones, and then Ostenfeld sits right behind. This is exactly how they need to play. These guys are playing the game right now. This is the gaming element of e-racing or esports, as Jones and Ostenfeld trying to figure out how to lock in their power and lock in their efforts to be most effective and most efficient here. Jones gapping off the back a little bit here. But then you see he puts the orange effort in, and that gets him past Ostenfeld. This is another part of it. You have to feather your power as you're approaching other riders to make sure you just sit right in the slipstream. Another very similar part of e-racing, a parallel to real-life racing, where when you catch on to a rider, you just want to sit on. You don't want to go right past them. You don't want to ride next to them. You want to get into the slipstream and then just sit there. Ostenfeld starting to suffer. He's into the red zone now. Remember, this is relative to their FTP, which is entered into RGT based on your power numbers, based on your race results, based on your power profiles and things like that. So these guys getting joined by some more chasers here on the climbing section of the course. Now remember, Swart and English are teammates of Jaden Yeager up there. So those two guys moving up, not going to be helpful here, but they do want to make sure they're there. This might be a podium sweep for these guys, as Swart and English saving their energy early on, and now they're just going to sit right on these two guys. And you can see Ostenfeld, top left part of the screen here, starting to look gassed.
Yeah. I need a gel.
Yeah, e-racing, certainly an intense discipline of the sport of bike racing, that's for sure, as Ostenfeld has showed over the last 38 minutes. Look at this effort. As we go inside 5 miles of racing to go to the finish. Now, the other thing that you start to see here is you'll see a lot more of the higher FTP levels. You see more oranges, more reds, as the riders start to go deeper and deeper later into the race as they're reaching for those bigger and bigger watts. Ostenfeld taking advantage of the downhill here. Trying to catch his breath, getting any oxygen he can here. Boy, I don't know. These guys have really struggled to make any significant progress in bringing Jaden Yeager back today. Yeager still sitting just under 0.2 of a mile ahead, as he sits right around 5 watts per kilo there. Oof. Swart, English, and Blackburn, all teammates of Jaden Yeager up the road, as Restart Racing has dominated this early season opener here. Ostenfeld can't do this one alone. He needs some help, and he's just not getting it from these Restart Racing riders with a teammate up the road. Looks like Project Echelon has one rider up there. They're going to try and help, but again, I think this might be too little too late with just 4 miles of racing to go. Jaeger steady in the yellow zone here. So that's right about in the middle. You should be able to do this for maybe 10, 15 minutes to stay in this zone. Wouldn't be unheard of. Once you get into the orange-red zones, you get down to maybe 2 minutes, and then into the red zone, it's like down to 10 or 15 seconds that you can hold it there. Jaeger coming up on some more lap traffic here. You can see even on the downhill section, Jaeger in the orange. And here goes a chase effort. Vogel going to come in for a late effort here. And Jaeger has widened his lead in the last 2 miles of virtual racing here, tacked on another 1/10 of a mile between the two of them. So this may be turning into a race for second, and it looks like that's the way that these guys are racing here in the group, because Jaeger's not coming back today. I think that's your winner. He should be able to go across the line solo just fine. And these guys are going to be sorting out second and third down in the main group. Blackburn moving up to the front of the main group here, trying to set a little tempo, do the last little bit of protection here for Jaden Jaeger as his rapid racing restart racing teammates try to get up there. Here's Vogel going. And Vogel trying to bring back Blackburn here with 2.5 miles to go. Now, this is a long effort. Vogel can't stay in the red zone for the remainder of this race. Neither can Blackburn. English going up there. These guys, this is now every man for himself. There is no longer any concerted effort to try to bring back Jaden Jaeger. This is now guys racing for second and third in this group. Vogel and Blackburn going to go head-to-head, but this might be a little early. Again, 2.2 miles of racing to go. These guys sitting back behind them, that might be the advantage here. Vogel doing a great job keeping the powder dry out there today. Now Blackburn going to move to the front. Look at the wattage for Jaden Yeager here. Now, Yeager, a bigger dude. He's a heavy guy, so his watts per kilogram will be higher than the average rider. So even though you see him going up into 5.4, 5.5, if the guys don't weigh as much as him, like you see Jones, English, Blackburn, I'm going to guess those guys are a little lighter than Jaden Yeager, so their numbers would be smaller. Again, it's a ratio of the wattage you put out to your body weight. And now this has just become a waiting game. Back in the chase group behind, because Yeager about to ride through the line to wrap this one up. And these guys now waiting to see who will stand on either side of Jaden Yeager on the virtual podium. Here goes Ostenfeld again. Into the red zone for Neil Ostenfeld. And look at Ostenfeld suffering here in the final mile of racing. And you can see it's tough as Ostenfeld put in that effort, but now he's fighting to hang on after setting the tempo early. Although he's doing a nice job of staying in this group, doing just as much work as he has to, no more than is necessary. You can see he does a good job of just staying in the group and then takes a break when he can here because he knows that the physics will work to his advantage and he'll be able to stay in there. So Dowd, Davenport, Swart, and Ostenfeld here. Vogel just dangling off the front of them in a purple jersey there. And now a little bit of separation on the descent. Vogel going to put some watts on the way down. Look at the watts per kilo starting to peak red all over the place. 7 watts per kilo, 8, 10. And Vogel finding a nice gap here in a bid for second. And there goes Jaden Yeager across the line. as Jaden Yeager going to lock in an early season win here as he takes the preseason race of the Echelon Racing League, going early and staying away. But now we're watching the race for second and third as Vogel looks like we'll get across, and I think Ostenfeld might have slipped in there for third. Jaden Yeager untouchable today as we go back to the race for what is 11th and 12th out on course with Marco Pavlik and James Vickers here. Remember, Pavlik, an early aggressor, trying to get that group to chase down Jaden Yeager early. I think probably one of the few guys in this group who realized how dangerous Jaden Yeager was, how much of a problem it could be if he got away solo and was able to just go into time trial mode. But Pavlik unsuccessful in getting the other riders to help him try to tack that back. So now he and Vickers going to be racing for 11 and 12 here on their way back in. All right, so as our final men finishing up, getting ready for our women's race taking off at 11 a.m. Eastern time. So those riders just about 7 minutes away from their start as they'll take to the same course for the same distance for our women's race. So again, this race, the first of the Echelon Racing League in 2020 and into 2021. A preseason event today before we move to the first stage race of the season, November 13th through 15th for the RGT Real Road stage race, racing on three of their highlighted real courses, the Camp Formentor, the Stelvio, and the Pienza, three legendary climbs that the Echelon Racing riders will be tackling before they head to the real-life American race, the Tour of the Gila in Silver City, New Mexico, for 3 days of racing there from December 4th to 6th, where again they will race the same elevation profiles of 3 days of racing at the real life Tour of the Gila. Then it's the Thompson-Bucks County Classic, one of the legendary races on the Pro Road Tour, the Armed Forces Cycling Classic. They're going to be racing on the Clarendon Cup course, which is pretty much pancake flat, but is they call it the race of 500 turns as the riders race 100K on that criterium course. Then it's over to the Gateway Cup, another really fun real-life event here in the United States. They're going to be racing virtually January 2nd through 3rd. Then it's the Redlands Bicycle Classic at the end of January from the 22nd to the 24th. For 4 days of stage racing there before we go to Arkansas for the Joe Martin stage race using their virtual courses in early February for moving over to the Green Mountain stage race and then wrapping up again with the Tour of America's Dairyland March 11th through 14th. I see some of our pro women warming up. Christy Tracy, Whitney Post on the left-hand side of your screen as they get into their warm-up zones here at about 4 minutes away from our pro women's start. Pro women on the line with 25 seconds to the start of our pro women's race here in the second race of the day in the Echelon Racing League preseason event as our women's field gets ready to conquer the Monaco GP course. Doing same course and same distance as our pro men that just raced at 10 o'clock about an hour ago here as pro women get ready to roll off and we're underway. Now, pro men's race earlier today won by a solo rider off the front, Jaden Yeager. We'll see if that same dynamic plays out here. Yeager went away after about 10 minutes of pack racing in the men's race, and now we saw Tracy making an early move. We saw her warming up earlier, and this is Tracy back to the front as Christine Tracy putting in 5.6 watts per kilo right now. And you can see Christine Tracy at the bottom of your screen there, and the Panaracer jersey, as Christy getting an early gap here with 5.4 watts per kilo. We'll see how much space she can open up at 20 yards right now. Back to Grabler. And you can see Tracy staying in the yellow-orange zone here as she just establishes her dominance here a little early. Acrosti taking a look. Lecomte wants to have a look at the front of the peloton here as well. As they go onto the climb for the first time in our pro women's race. So here's the course that they're racing today. Again, a course mimicking the Monaco Grand Prix course. The climbing comes at the backside of this circuit as they move away from the sea, sort of on the way out from the marina, and then they drop back down towards the east side of the marina. So that's what they're on right now, moving away. That's where the steepest part of the climb is. You see the VeloViewer graphic here showing the percentage of the climb, a steady 10% on the way up, and then it actually gets easier as they get closer to the top, and then a pretty steep descent, a little over 10% on the way down before things even out and flatten out. And that's right where the start-finish line is, at the end of that flat green section on the bottom of the course. All right, looks like Grabler moving up to get a little bit of space. Christy Tracy going to chase down and sit right on the wheel. Another good example of a well-played RGT strategy here, where she just gets into the draft and then lets up so that she's not putting in more watts than she needs to. This is going to be a good group of three right here with Tracy, Ward, and Grabler going to go clear. Now, these three will work together. These are three very smart riders. They know exactly what they're doing, and this is very, very dangerous for the rest of the group. If you're not in this group of three, I would put in the effort right now and try and get there, because Tracy and Grabler here doing a really nice job early on to cause some separation. Now we'll see if they can work together or get any other riders to join them in this group of three. Now, part of that probably because they were on the climbing section. Some riders will favor that uphill section of the course a little bit more and try and attack there. And Evok Bikes, Grobler moving up to the front to take her pole. And then Maddie Ward, I think, going to be the third rider to tack on into that group. So here you go. They let off a little bit in that group of three. Lecomte coming up and bringing a group with her to join this group. But this is definitely a separation. Look at that group falling behind there. Another separation being made here. If you're not in this 8 or 10 rider group, that might be the end of the day for you. The first selection usually happens pretty quickly in these E-races, I think. And then the winning selection tends to happen a little bit later, closer to the halfway mark. Sierra and Ayala starting to move up on the outside of the group into the orange zone. Just trying to stay in the group. Christy Tracy spending a lot of time on the front. Now, again, just like real life racing, you want to make sure that you conserve your energy. So unless Tracy is trying to spark something, is trying to get away here, or if she's just trying to play the game of attrition and try and wear riders down at the back by just making sure that the tempo stays high enough. When she feels a drop in the tempo, she'll move up to the front. So Christy Tracy racing with 3 teammates in the competition today. And here's Bovo moving up to the front, the Canadian. So Team Infinite going to swap poles up here. They are making this very difficult for the rest of the riders in this group today. Grobler now takes a little look off the front, and then there's Tracy once again, just as the pace starts to drop enough. She's there to lift it. Another parallel of the racing here is the sort of elastic element of these fields. If you get snapped out of the group, you're really going to be in trouble, so it's important to stay up at the front for riders like Tina Grobler, and that's why you've been seeing that name so much today, because she doesn't want to get caught on the wrong side of a split. Grobler riding for the EVOC bike team with a roster of 6 riders starting the race today, with Henry, McCrosty, Pitzer, Ricktrova, and Timewell. Although so far, Grobler has been the star of the EVOC bike team. And Grobler going to go into the red here. Deep effort for Grobler. And a good look at some more names that we've seen a lot of today. We saw Maddie Ward up there earlier today. This is the Amy D Foundation with Catherine Curry, Sue Lynn Holt, Pamela Levine, Elena O'Mara, Whitney Post, Maddie Ward, and Eleanor Wiseman. See Christy Tracy at the bottom of your screen, leading this group and forcing another separation. She's going to take York and Grobler with her. Grobler opening up a little bit of space here, but I don't think anything intentional. You see she lets off back into the green zone, let everyone else catch up, let her go back into the group. Again, with nobody to chase, with nobody away here, the focus here should really be to spend as little time as possible on the front of this group. So you see on the way down, the downhill section here gives riders a little chance to relax. Racing series. Good to see Sean Morelli taking the start line today, the world champion, now racing with Project Echelon. So it'll be a pleasure to watch Morelli tear it up out there this season as we move into some of our in real life races later on in the Echelon Racing League.
So Grobler and Tracy setting tempo. Here's Aaron Ayala moving up the left side of the group. Another rider that's been aggressive quite a bit out there today. Ayala racing with the Velocity Vixen squad along with Morgan Chafin, Angie Kozina, Darlene Crone, and Beth York. Saw Beth York racing earlier. So now single file on the way back up the climb. Grobler, Tracy, Beauville, Ward, and Chafin, followed by York, Ayala, McCrosty, and Wiseman. Looks like Ayala may be dropping out of this group a little bit. Struggling on the way up as Aaron Ayala getting gapped off. You see her go into the red zone, trying to save it, trying to get into this group. But Ayala dropping off the back as that'll make 7 up at the front here. York going to be the last one to slip in. Now York gapping off the back a little bit. This is a big selection being made right now. They're starting to get into that point of the race where riders are starting to crack. We saw it with Ayala. York maybe the next one to go. As you can see, the suffering for these riders. With Angela Pitzer down in the bottom right of your picture. See Anna Strelo down in the bottom left, Beth York up in the top left, and Yvonne Timwell in the top right of your picture. Always tested question of the Pain Cave is, where do you put your fan? Where's the best place to stay cool? See Pitzer and Timwell with their fans off to the side, and then I think Strelo and York have theirs up front. All right, back to racing out on course. This group picks up a few more riders as Tracy goes deep across the line here. And there's Tracy at the bottom of this look of 2. Not going too deep. You see the green zone right here, and everyone else is just sort of responding to the tempo that that Tracy is setting. No offense to Jen Yeager in our men's race earlier, but this one proving much more interesting as by this time in the men's race, Yeager had already gone away solo, but this group much closer here and a much tighter race in our early season women's race. Back onto the uphill section as Grabler, Tracy, Beauville, Chafin, Ward, and York. Your remaining group here, although York has been yo-yoing back and forth off the back, although watching on her live cam still looks relatively fresh, so I think York still has some in the tank. I think it might just be a matter of lining up the effort with the gameplay here for her to stay in the group. Maddie Ward back in. There's York in the red zone at the back. She may be in trouble here. And this group coming up on 13 miles of racing to go here. Again, racing on the RGT platform, getting some questions on our YouTube streams about where these riders are racing. This is the Monaco circuit on the RGT race platform. RGT, a free-to-ride platform where anyone can download and get riding if you've got a smart trainer to connect. Very similar to all the other e-racing platforms out there. But no monthly requirement. There is a premium service available on RGT, just like the other Zwift or Be Cool or whatever your platform of choice is. But Echelon Racing League deciding to race on RGT for their real roads ability because they can insert elevation profiles from real races and then play those back for the riders. So that's what they're doing right now, racing around a realistic profile circuit from the Monaco GP circuit. York looking for a little bit of relief on the way down. You see Lecomte struggling a little bit, and this is Ayala, who now finds herself solo in a little bit of trouble in ninth, all alone. And this is going to go down to 4, maybe 5 on the front. Here comes Timwell. And seeing Yvonne Timwell starting to come up to the front for the first time today. She's been there all day, but this is really the first time that now the selection has been made, and this is going to be a dangerous rider. So watch out for Timwell as we get down to the final 8 or 9 miles. Certainly a rider that can make a long-distance ride. And now Timwell going to be spending a lot more time at the front. I think was just waiting for the field to thin out a little bit before she made her way up to the front of the group. Still 13 miles of racing to go, but it looks like Rogers working in here too, although Rogers may be a lapped rider getting caught here. We'll check. Yeah, I think that is what's happening. Right, so they're moving through some lap traffic here. Rogers, you see down in 15th, so they should work their way through here pretty quickly. Beauville is good, Grobler is good, Tracy is good, Ward is good, McCrosty is good, and then we should see Ayala coming up behind. See on the left-hand side of the screen, the riders like Bonacisi are coming up on a lap down as they get caught by our lead group. All right, back through the top of the circuit now as they'll hit just over 12 miles of racing to go. Hard to believe it's only been 23 minutes of elapsed racing, but this down to a selection of basically 5 riders here. So I think just one lapped rider in this group. I believe Wall here is a lap down. Grobler still up at the front here, but doing a lot of work today. Look at this, in the red zone and opening a little gap behind her. She'll let off the gas a little bit. But Grobler not afraid to be aggressive on the climb here, that's for sure. Grobler going to let off on the way down here. Wouldn't be surprised to see that group catch up on the descent. I think Grobler just finding herself off the front a little bit. And this should be hopefully a chance for the riders to get a little bit of rest here after they crest the top of the big climb there. Grobler working her way down. So these are the chasers sitting behind. Looks like Timwell dropping well back here. Not sure what's going on with Yvonne Timwell. And that's her down in the bottom right. Timwell's starting to suffer. Look at the pain face there. So this is the race for 11th place on down as Timwell has slipped into there. Look at Grobler and Tracy going here. Now they're going to try and split away as Grobler started this. Tracy going to join on. And they are forcing some other riders into the red and orange power zones here as well. This is a big move by Grobler and Tracy. Chafin will be there as well. Tacking on. Nice job to see this move and go just in time. And as Tracy sets tempo, that's going to give these other riders a chance to catch on. Beauville and Ward will get there. So it looks like maybe a little truce being called here in the group as Maddie Ward makes her way up to the front now. The American on the Amy D Foundation team, another squad fielding one of the larger rosters of the Echelon Racing League. So they'll have plenty of riders to cycle through in this season. The league works with a 12-rider roster that they can race 6 riders at any time. So at the beginning of the season, the teams can put 12 riders on their roster, and then they can choose which of those 6 teams will race in each of the Echelon Race League events. Here's Morgan Chafin from the Velocity Vixens team. Saw her teammate Beth York earlier in the Velocity Vixens Pain Cave with the mascot as well. All right, so look at the chasers on the screen now. The race for 9th place on down, led by Bonassisi. And then this is the front group with Mallory McCrosty sitting 3rd in the group, one of the Evoque bike riders, another strong squad fielding a big roster this year. Boy, how about Tracy today? Here goes Christy Tracy. Little gap off the front here. Tracy sitting at 6 watts per kilo. And you see the first 4 riders going into the red here, into the red zone based on their FTP. The numbers will light up red when they go into the red zone. And look at this. That's Christy Tracy at the bottom of your picture there, putting in that red effort. You can see the colors underneath their names also change on the name tag on the gameplay. And then there's just a small line of color to the left of the leaderboard that will light up as their power zones change as well. So Tracy going deep. She went into the red zone a couple times, but now she'll get a little rest. You see the green bar under her name right now as she takes it easy on the way down, and then you see the number next to her name on the leaderboard to the left of the screen also starting to drop down. She was in the red zone up around 6, but now back around 4 watts per kilogram. Here's Grobler, one of our early aggressors today, getting distance off the back of her group. Grobler into the orange zone now, so she is putting in an effort trying to catch back on to McCrosty up the road, but there is some major separation happening here up at the front as Tracy puts in the effort. McCrosty goes with her, and then Grobler trying to chase on. Grobler still within striking distance, but you see she's trying to save energy in the green zone. That means barely any effort at all on the way down here. Now, as long as Tracy and McCrosty are doing the same thing, that's okay. She won't lose any time, but right now you see Tracy going up into the orange, so she is putting in an effort here, and I think Grobler probably needs to use this time to try to put that effort in. So Tracy and McCrosty going to be the 2 stars today with 8.5 miles of racing to go. There's Christy Tracy going at it. You see the fan blowing as she tries to stay cool down in her Pain Cave live stream studio. Tracy doesn't even need her Team Infinite teammates today. We saw a little bit of blocking going on in the men's race, but she hasn't needed it at all today. And leaders just going through the start-finish as it will be these 3 today. Grobler, nice job to chase back on. That was a pivotal moment in the race for Grobler. But able to regain contact there. So this a really, really good setup for Evoque Bike as they're going to have a pair of riders here going up against Tracy. You see Grobler and McCrosty. The two leaders for Evoc Bike today with Michelle Henry, Angela Pitzer, Yana Ritrova, and Yvonne Timwell. Timwell, an early aggressor, but getting dropped out of this group after putting in a big effort. And now it comes down to these three, just waiting to sort out which steps on the virtual podium they'll stand on. So again, this is just lap traffic here that our three leaders are working through. Well, not just a waiting game for these three for the last 7 miles here, as long as they don't let up so much that any riders behind them can catch on. And I don't think that's a threat. Boville at 0.16 miles down, Ward at 0.18 miles down, and Wissman behind them at 0.4 miles down. So riders starting to crack out there. It is going to be that group of three, and I think that's who we're watching until the end of this one today. And RGT going to put riders into the super tuck here on the way down. You see them leaning forward on the descent as they let off the gas. Now, again, this also adjusts their trainer at home. There's a two-way resistance basically on these trainers so that as the course goes uphill, the resistance increases on the trainers for the riders at home. Yeah, and you can see these riders spending a lot of time in the green and blue zones. This is a waiting game between this group of three right here. They're all watching one another to wait and see. I think Evoc Bike probably has the most incentive to just sit back right now and let Tracy make the move, because they'll be able to throw a 1-2 at it in the last, let's say, 2 miles or so. They can launch an early attack and then keep another attack with the second rider to sit on Christy Tracy when she inevitably has to chase the first attack that Evoc Bike will launch. So they're in a good spot. Just keep Christy Tracy exactly where she is right now. Keep this group of three going to the line. Maybe launch an attack early in the closing couple miles of racing, and then keep one rider tacked on that can beat Tracy in a sprint to the line for the win. It's a win-win for Evoc. Either the solo rider stays away off the front, or the rider that's with Tracy stays with her and then is able to beat her on the line, because Tracy was doing all the work to try to chase the first Evoc bike rider that'll go off the front. Grobler going into the orange here. Tracy responding and then letting up once she catches on. And then McCrusty responds. Now taking a look at Tracy and Timwell at the top of your screen. As Tracy working through some lap traffic here with Grobler and McCrosty on her wheel. Into the red zone here for all three at just over 6 watts per kilogram on the way up. Remember, the climb here, not super steep, but it is relatively long. You see they're in that 10% section for a long time up the backside of the course. And then they give it all back pretty quickly. The descent is much quicker on the top of the course on the way down to that flat green section at the bottom. So just a long, steady, grinding climb of about 10% on the way up here. And they go into 5 miles to go now. It'll be interesting to see how Evoc Bike plays this one on the run into the finish here. Which rider goes first? I assume one rider is going first. That may be an incorrect assumption on my part, but I think the obvious play here would be to send one rider attacking early. Not sure if they have comms or not on the Evoc Bike team. I know a pretty well-equipped squad, a pretty well-organized team, so I would imagine they're in some communication here. Christy Tracy's got to be thinking about this already. You can see not a ton of effort for these riders with 1, 2, and 3. They've mostly stayed in the blue and green zone on the way down. Riders behind them are fighting a little bit back in 4th, 5th, and 6th place with Chafin, Beauville, and Ward. You see some red numbers starting to peak back there, but our leaders on the way down now. All right, so Grobler, McCrosty, and Tracy going to head out for their final 4 miles of racing up at the front in 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. And then we'll see Beauville, Chafin, and Ward come through. I think Beauville and Chafin riding together. Ward just a little bit behind them, and then pretty big gap back to 7th and 8th place with Wiseman and O'Mara. Beauville going into the red at 4 watts per kilo. Down in 4th and 5th. All right, so here's Beauville, Chafin, and Solim, which I think is a lapped rider that's tacked on to them. I think Chafin and Beauville, the only 2 riders that are good here. Yeah, so you see Salim there, lapped rider at 20th place. So Ward is the rider that they have to worry about behind him because she looks like she may be working her way up. Beauville separating things a little bit here from Chafin. Chafin going to respond to try to get back up there. All right, so as Beauville and Chafin battle it out in 4 and 5, back up with 1, 2, and 3. Looks like Grobler getting distanced a little bit off the back of this group of 3. And she's going to go into the orange to try to chase on. Wouldn't be surprised to see her go red. There we go. But McCrosty and Tracy are going red as well here. So Grobler might be in some real trouble with 3 miles to go. And Tracy driving the pace here as Christy Tracy, the early aggressor, continues to put the pressure on the rest of the field. And here's a live look at Tracy, your solo or about to be solo leader off the front as she goes out of the saddle for Team Infinite. And there's the damage that she's done, gapping McCrosty. Grobler's in trouble. She is gone. So this is going to be McCrosty and Tracy in the final 3 miles of racing. Well, Tracy didn't want to wait for Evoc Bike to play their game, so Tracy took the fight to them instead of waiting around for Evoc Bike to attack, knowing that she was outnumbered with 2 riders. Tracy said, I'm going to take it to them early so that they can't execute their game plan. And it might be working here because they gapped Grobler off early. She maybe sensed some weakness with Grobler, but Grobler is gone. That'll be McCrosty and Tracy, 1 and 2 off the front here. That'll be interesting to see if McCrosty tries to go over the top of Tracy here, but probably just going to sit on. Give Grobler a little bit more time to try to catch here with still 2.5 miles to go. McCrosty doesn't need to start attacking Christy Tracy yet. She can let Tracy keep trying to put those efforts in and maybe give Grobler a chance to try to get back on here. So a crucial time for Grobler here to try and catch back on. And again, she does need to get into the slipstream of this group. Real-life physics apply in a situation like this where Grobler will need to get as close as she can to the back of this group to try to save as much energy as she can, try to be as efficient as possible. See, and this might be working. McCrosty sitting on might allow Grobler to get back on here. This is a perfect scenario for Evok Bike here. Great ride by Grobler to catch back on here. Really easy to give up the ghost in a situation like that when you get gapped off, but her teammate McCrosty did a nice job to sit on Tracy and then just wait for Grobler to come back. So now they're back to this good scenario of having two Evok bike riders up against Christy Tracy. Grobler attacking a little bit here on the way up as we go back to Chafin and Beauville, still battling for 4 and 5. This is going to be a good one to watch here as well. So we really have two races going on. The battle for 1, 2, and 3, and then this, what's on your screen now, is the battle for 4 and 5 between the Canadian Beauville and the American Chafin. So we'll keep our eye on that as we go back to the leaders with Grobler, who had got dropped off out of this group, caught back on, and then gapped off the front. But Tracy and Grobler's teammate McCrosty going to catch on right here. This is just cat and mouse. This is tactical racing in the Echelon Racing League today for the final 1.4 miles of our pro women's race. Tracy into the red. But then back into green quickly, so not an attack there. She's just trying to move up. She was just putting in a quick, strong effort there to make sure that she stayed in it, but then she went back to green. Now, this is a sustained attack. You see, she stays in the red zone for Christy Tracy, so that tells us that she's going deep here, and Grobler in trouble. Grobler is going red as well, but can't maintain the gap here, so even as Grobler goes into almost her deepest effort, she's getting gapped off on the way up here. Grobler in trouble again as Christy Tracy turns the screws once again on the lead group here. McCrosty able to respond, and then Tracy backs off a little bit as we get a live look at Christy Tracy here. Look at Tracy using her upper body. You see the shoulder movement on the trainer here as she gets out of the saddle. She's trying to use her body weight and the grip on her handlebars to try to drive some power down into her legs and down into the pedals, using her hips, sort of using your entire body to try to get a last few watts out of there as you start to go deeper and deeper. Down to the last mile of racing, McCrosty and Tracy going to be locked in here. Doesn't look like Grobler going to get back today, but she may be fighting for 4th and 5th if Chafin and Beauville keep riding. Grobler may be in danger of being caught and swept off the podium. We'll keep our eye on that. But meanwhile, Tracy and McCrosty and this will be almost completely tactical because both of these riders have put in a massive effort today, and now it's just going to be about timing and about maybe how quickly you can get those power numbers up. This will be good to watch. A sprint finish to conclude our first preseason event in the Echelon Racing League. Tracy and McCrosty matching this almost perfectly. Into the last kilometer of racing now. Tracy and McCrosty sitting right around 3.5, 4 watts per kilo. They're both in the green zone, so neither one of these riders is even close to being on the limit. So watch the colors below the name as those change from green closer to red. Green is basically the bottom of the spectrum, and red is basically the top of the spectrum. Grobler coming up behind him. See, as these two riders are in the green, Grobler is in the orange. She's using the opportunity here to try to catch back on after getting dropped off early. Tracy and McCrosty playing games. That's going to allow Grobler to try to get back up here. But now Tracy opens the sprint. They're red across the board now as Tracy and McCrosty going to go head-to-head to the line here in the final 0.1 miles of racing. McCrosty takes the lead. Then Tracy takes over. Here comes McCrosty back in the last 200 meters of racing. McCrosty going to gap off Christy Tracy here. Tracy did a ton of work early on, and McCrosty going to hit the line to take the win today with Tracy in second. Grobler will stay on for third place today, the final spot on the podium. Great riding by Evok Bike, great riding by McCrosty, and great riding by Tracy as well, holding on for a second place ride today. Here's the battle for 4 and 5. Beauville and Chafin on their way in now, the American and the Canadian. And the exact same scenario unfolding here. These two matching each other, sitting on, waiting to see who's going to be the first to go. Beauville warming up the engine into orange. Chafin and Beauville going into the red as Maddie Ward sitting in 6 will work her way in solo, so she should be good for a top 10 finish. Chafin attacking Beauville. That's going to be it for 4th as Chafin will hit the line for the 4th spot today. Beauville will have to settle for 5th, but a solid top 5 ride, and then Maddie Ward is going to hit the line behind them in 6th place. So here's Ward finishing up her day. And then it looks like Weissman will be the next rider behind Ward with a pretty solid gap, about 0.3 of a mile back for 7th place. So that should be a pretty comfortable gap for Maddie Ward from 6th back to 7th, and then a pretty comfortable gap from 7th back to 8th as those gaps get bigger and bigger inside the top 10 here. All right, so Wiseman in, and now a good battle here in the race for 8th with Yvonne Timewell here leading the way early on. Look at these riders all spread out across the road, matched up perfectly here. And here's Timewell trying to get the best out of this group here in the race for 8th place on down. Timewell into the orange. And boy, this has got to hurt. Rogers into the red in the final couple hundred meters here. Red across the board. Timewell and Rogers going to go head-to-head. Almost to the line. Rogers pulls ahead. Here's an effort from Wall up the right side. And it looks like Wall got in there for 9th. Timewell will have to settle for 10th. And Buonasassi in for 11th out of that group as they wrap up the top 10 today. Well, got to say, overall, our pro women's race much more interesting than the pro men's race. An incredible battle unfolding off the front there with Christy Tracy and Frosty going at it. We've got Christy Tracy with us here on our live look in. Christy, first of all, congratulations on a great ride today. What a battle going head-to-head, 2 riders. This is about as good as it gets for e-racing out there today.
Yeah, they were really, really great to race with. I mean, it's never an ideal situation when you're the one out with 2 teammates, but I did the best I could to manage it, and everybody worked pretty well to keep us away until the cat and mouse started. It was a really good race.
When you realized that you had 2 EVOC bike riders with you, what went through your head? I mean, did you have an idea of what you thought they might try? Were you trying to get ahead of their plan? What was your strategy being outnumbered in the group?
Honestly, they didn't have any riders in the chase group, and so I thought they would also be motivated to stay away. So I worked fairly hard to get it established until we had about a quarter mile. And then I tried to sit in as much as I could because I was hoping they would work just hard enough to at least keep us away from the chasers. And all I had to do was stay fresh enough to sprint and stay away as well. But they weren't exactly working with me on that plan. So I did more work than what I would have wanted to. But I mean, it was good race tactics all around. I would have done the same in their shoes for sure. And then
looking ahead to the rest of the races this season with our stage races coming up here, does this change your strategy now as we start to kind of get an idea of who the stars are going to be, who the big players are going to be, and then getting into a multi-day race? Was the one-day race a lot different, do you think, today than the multi-day races will be later in the season?
I think, well, for me, I'll have a bigger team. I had 3 teammates in the race today, which is awesome. I think going forward, we're going to have pretty much full rosters. So I think it'll be different racing because all the girls will have 6-girl rosters. And there will be a lot more team tactics at play. And I don't think, unless all the teams are represented in a break, I think it's going to be harder for a break to establish because there's going to be more girls to work to bring it back. And yeah, I mean, the single day races, you can leave it all out there. You don't have to worry about conserving anything for the next several days. So you get into a break, you can work it as hard as you want and not worry about anything except for the finish line. So.
Well, plenty of time to recover today. Congratulations on a great ride today. 2nd place for Christy Tracy with the EVOC bike team. Christy, can't wait to watch your race the rest of the season. It's going to be an exciting year at the Echelon Race League.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
All right, so we'll be meeting riders like Christy throughout the year for the rest of the season this year as we head to the rest of the Echelon Racing League calendar with the RGT Railroad Stage Race coming up November 13th through 15th, then the Tour of the Gila on December 4th through 6th. A pair of one-day races after that with the Thompson-Bucks County Classic, followed by the Armed Forces Cycling Classic, back-to-back one-day races on that weekend before we move to the Gateway Cup January 2nd and 3rd, and then the legendary Redlands Bicycle Classic, January 22nd through 24th for 4 days of racing there before going to the virtual Arkansas courses of the Joe Martin Stage Race, February 5th through 7th, then the Green Mountain Stage Race, February 19th through 21st, and the Tour of America's Dairyland, wrapping up the Echelon Race League for the 2021 fall-winter season, again, March 11th and 14th for the multi-day stage race there to wrap things up. So that's going to do it for our live broadcast of the Echelon Racing League today for our first preseason test event. Racing resumes November 13th through 15th with the RGT Railroad Stage Race before we move to the IRL roads of the Tour of the Gila, December 4th through 6th. So my name is Brad Soner, saying thanks for watching. It's been a pleasure watching a little bit of e-racing today. Hope you have a great day, a great weekend, and we'll see you back November 13th, 15th for the RGT Railroad Stage Race in the Echelon Racing League.